Good morning. We are so glad you're here today. So glad you're here today on this soon-to-be hot day, but it's beautiful right now, so let's sing Morning Has Broken, a wonderful spiritual song to get our bodies and spirits. Let's rise in body or spirit and sing with gusto to welcome the new people as they're coming in. Here we go. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of a new day.
Good morning, and welcome to our service. Whether you're here with us on Zoom or with us here in person, we are glad that you're here. I'm Mary Howard, your substitute worship associate, so give me some space. Reverend Lucy is preaching today, and her sermon title will be Wu-Wei, the Art of Doing and Not Doing. Reverend Roger will be back from vacation this week, and we are joined by Irina, our pianist, and Colleen and Ivan, our tech people, to help make this all happen. So our building and grounds are not up to snuff this morning. We had a large rental raucous party last night, and the staff was here until almost 10 o'clock cleaning up. So we ask that you recognize and release any judgment you have of our campus conditions. If you'd like to follow the music and readings in the order of service, a printed copy is on the table in the back by the doors, or you can click on the link in the Zoom chat. The blue sheet, which has our weekly calendar of events, is also on the back table, and also online in a link on the chat. If you are new to UUSS, we extend a special welcome. Please fill out a newcomer's card so that we can connect with you, either by the link to our website, lots of links here, or at the welcome table after the service. And we hope that you stay after the service. On Zoom, we have about 12 minutes of conversation and getting acquainted in small breakout rooms, or if you're here in person, you can join us for refreshments out on the patio. You can also check out the connections table in the welcome hall, which has a plethora of events and activities that are happening here. Today after church, Reverend Lucy is going to offer a newcomer's orientation and a tour of the campus. So if you're interested, grab some coffee or tea, and meet her at that famous welcome table out there.
Everyone's invited.
Oh yeah, anyone can come, thank you. We invite you to explore the ways we live out our mission, which says, we come together to be a force for healing in the world. Our summer bi-weekly message comes out by email every other Friday during the summer. You can find it on our website and subscribe to it there. It has announcements, invitations, and always a pastoral note. For kids and youth in the summer, we have a religious education program called Artworks. It starts at 10:15 before church every Sunday. Again, we're glad you're here. Please check your cell phones to make sure they're on silent mode, or you can just turn them off. You can avoid embarrassment and help everyone to be more present and mindful during the service. So welcome, and now just sit back and relax while Irina gives us some centering music.
They like you, Irina. Our service theme today is about ancient Chinese philosophy. So for our chalice lighting, I'm bringing in the words of Mo Tzu, a Chinese philosopher born in 470 BCE. When all the people of the world love, then the strong will not empower the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. The cunning will not deceive the simple. We light our chalice this morning as a reminder of the power of love. Can you hear me okay? Good. Nice to see all of you. I don't know if you're like me, it's kind of hard right now. The level of tension about the world is pretty high. Even if you've managed to avoid reading the newspaper in an obsessive way, it's still a challenging time to be on this earth, as there have been in the history of humans. And I actually find some relief in knowing that humans have gone through very challenging times before. But I'm going to be talking about Taoism today. And one of the qualities of Taoism is it's this idea of learning how to be in resonance with the rhythms of life. So I thought for our prayer this morning, because I'm actually a little tired of words, and I'm going to have a lot of words later on in the service, that we might do some humming together. We've done this before, and I've gotten feedback from some of you that you found it very enriching and supportive. So it's pretty simple. You're just going to find a pitch and a place in your body in which to hum, and you can move that around. However, I think you'll find that your own hum will be enmeshed with everyone else's. So if you have a fear of standing out or you feel self-conscious about it, just start small and let it blossom as it does. And we'll just do this for a few minutes together. You're going to breathe at your own pace. But I encourage you to breathe, hum in your throat, hum in your belly. Just try it. Cats really know that this is the right thing to do. They really know. And we all know cats are as chill as any being can possibly be. So we're going to all be cats this morning and practice our purring. So I'll just kick off with a note and you join on in. And again, remember your own pace, your own breathing pattern, your own pitch, and let's just let it unfold. So let the hum just permeate right into your body, into your bones. Feel it in your bones. And if you're comfortable getting a little louder, don't be shy. Try humming in a different part of your body now than you have. Try relaxing your jaw as you hum. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms. Relax your mind. That's the most important one, right? Shut off that mind. And now let your next breath be your last hum. Let's bring our hands to our heart. Holy Spirit, let us feel the resonance of life. Let us feel on the wavelength of love and connection with all the goodness in our world, all the beings that are striving to contribute and be positive and loving. Let us tune to the wavelength of love. Give us what we need. Give us what we need. Help us to find a path. Let us blend our voices as we go forth with the energy and goodness of life, always with us, always holding us, always inspiring us. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. And let's just take a minute of silence to reflect on the prayers that you hold in your own heart. Now let's take one big deep breath together and let it out with a sigh. Oh, amen. So now we're going to practice breathings together with music. We know can you play the melody line, Irina? Thank you. We're going to do meditation on breathing, and Beth is going to come up. You want to be over here, Beth? There we go. So this is a 3-part. We've done it before, but it may be new to some of you, and it's a wonderful layered piece. So Beth is going to be our, what do we call that? Drone. Thank you, Mary. Beth is going to be our drone. So let's all do the drone together. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Good job. Keep going. I'm going to layer on the second part, and join me when you're ready, or stay in the drone. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. out. I breathe out love when I breathe in. I breathe in peace when I breathe out. I breathe out love when I breathe in. I breathe in peace when I breathe out. I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Ooh, too much breathing. I'm not tracking well. So this is a You Pick Sunday. Our first. I offered 4 options for the sermon this morning, and 125 people voted. Or since I gave the option of voting early and voting often, I should say there were 125 votes. And the winner is the one based on Taoist philosophy, Wu-Wei. Now, I have to say, I kind of thought I'd just pull it off the shelf and stand here and do it. Yeah, well, that didn't work out. I did a little bit of tweaking to it, so it's not exactly the sermon that I did 2 years ago. But I was really surprised at how some of the discussion in the sermon about political things and my response to them felt exactly the same as they do now. So relevance is still there. The last time I preached it was the Sunday after the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. So I changed some of the language, but I found lots of things to replace it with, sadly. Also, when I gave this sermon back in 2020, or maybe 21, Fred Best did a wonderful reflection, and I'm hoping you're on Zoom with us today, Fred. So I actually imported some of Fred's material into the sermon because it was so good. I wanted to make sure that those points were made. And so maybe I'll make a letter F. How do I do that? When it's Fred's stuff rather than my stuff. So there's a couple of paragraphs, Fred, that I borrowed from your reflection and incorporated into the sermon. So there's 3 parts to this sermon. Each part starts with a reading and then followed by a homily. So Mary's going to get us started with the first reading.
The first reading is from the second book of Tao, translated by Stephen Mitchell. You can't talk about the ocean with a frog who lives in a well. He is bounded by the space he inhabits. You can't talk about ice with an insect who was born in June. He is bounded by a single season. You can't talk about the Tao with a person who thinks he knows something. He is bounded by his own beliefs. The Tao is vast, and fathomless. You can understand only by stepping beyond the limits of yourself.
So I was on a trip for a couple of weeks and was not really connected with what was going on in the United States. So my past week has been spent doom scrolling. Some of you may know what that is. That's where you're fixated on bad news, particularly on Facebook or in the New York Times. That works as well. You keep reading everything that comes along, and it takes you deeper and deeper and into a darker and darker place. It's very hard to pull away from doom scrolling. But whether or not you have been doom scrolling, it's been a hard month, hard few years. Many of us have been on edge. I have to admit to you, my dear friends, who I know you love me, that some of my thoughts about the Supreme Court decisions and the conservative justices have been less than charitable. Significantly less than charitable. But you know what? It's really okay as long as I don't dwell on those feelings, as long as they don't consume me. Sometimes our anger and our powerlessness needs expression, if only in our minds and our thoughts. It really helps us to navigate this world, and it keeps us from taking out our negative emotions on others, because they have to have a place to go. This sense of powerlessness we're feeling is very painful. It's so painful to watch our country going in the wrong direction and feel that there's not a lot that we can do. One thing I've heard from many of you is the desire to do something, to speak up, act out, provoke change, anything to keep from falling into complacency and despair. We had an event last month where a group of us advocated with the county to support funding for homelessness, and it was a very rewarding experience because we felt like we were not just being complacent about a terrible problem in our world. Uh-oh, my pages are out of order here. Hold on. Oh. So one way to get perspective on our circumstance is to draw from the wisdom of the ages. Human history is riddled with violence and strife and blessed with sages who have sorted through these things through the centuries. So this morning, we're going to be talking about Taoism, which I think has much wisdom to offer us in these tumultuous times. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this or pretend like this is a magic bullet, because Taoism is very challenging. Challenging to comprehend and even more challenging to put into place. But it can be something worth taking into your mind and heart as an opening and a possibility. The Tao means the source. That's what the word Tao means. The pattern and substance of everything that exists. The pattern and substance of everything that exists. And according to Taoism, our task in life is to live in harmony with the Tao, live in harmony with the pattern and substance of everything that exists. So let's consider that reading. You can't talk about the ocean with a frog who lives in a well. Of course, you probably already decided who the frog in the well is, right? Maybe the Trump supporters, maybe some of the really radical conservatives. They live and swim in waters that are quite different from our own. And many of their waters are seriously deep, like you don't want to go there. Bridging this gap is very challenging because we don't really come from the same context. So the second part of the reading is really directed towards us. You can't talk about the Tao with a person who thinks he knows everything. He is bounded by his own beliefs. You can only understand by stepping beyond the limits of yourself. So while we may perceive our worldview to be larger and more expansive than that frog in the conspiracy theory well, we're in our own well, so to speak. This reading helps us to understand the challenge that we can't talk about the ocean to a frog who lives in a well. Where do you even start? But also, we need to let go of our ideas that we know everything and we have all the answers and step beyond our own beliefs. This is really the only thing that is going to save us. The Tao challenges us to think differently, to be different in connecting with rhythms, flow, transformation, connection, possibilities, to live in harmony with the rhythms of life. I got myself in trouble by printing on both sides of the paper. It's almost like a little Tao trick. So hold on, give me just a second to get organized here, and then I'll be right with you. Our second reading today is from Chuang Tsu. He was an influential Chinese philosopher who lived around the 4th century before the Common Era. His writings are considered some of the foundation texts of Taoism and was written 200 years after the time of the Tao Te Ching. Listen to one of his lessons. Yan Hui went to his master to say goodbye. The master said, "Where are you going?" "I am going to Wei." "What are you going to do there?" "I heard that the Prince of Wei is young and that he is arbitrary in his actions. He is not much concerned with his country and is not aware of his mistakes. He thinks nothing of people dying. The dead lie everywhere like thick grass in a swamp. The people have nowhere to turn. I've heard you say, Master, leave the country that is already well governed and go to a country that is in chaos. I would like to use your teachings to remedy the situation there." The master said, "If you go there, you will only get into trouble. Tao must be pure. When something is added to it, there is confusion. When there is confusion, there is anxiety. With anxiety, there is no hope. The wise old ones realized Tao in themselves before they offered it to another. If you are not certain you have it in yourself, how can you change a tyrant's action? Though you are highly virtuous and trustworthy, if you do not understand the people's spirits, and though you are famous and do not compete, if you don't understand the people's minds, but instead go to a tyrant and lecture him on goodness, ethical behavior, measures, and standards, you are just using the failings of others to demonstrate your own superiority. This is deliberately hurting other people. One who hurts others will in turn be hurt. You will probably end up in trouble. Do not force things. It is dangerous to deviate from instructions or push for completion. It takes a long time to do things properly. So then, flow with whatever may happen and let your mind be free. Stay centered by accepting whatever you are doing. This is the ultimate. How else can you carry out your task? It is best to leave everything to work naturally, though this is not easy. Neither is having your stuff printed on two sides of the page. There we go. The author of that reading lived during a time of tremendous tumult in ancient China. There was more than 200 years of war and political upheaval. Imagine. So I want to start reflecting on that piece with the line, "It's best to leave everything to work naturally, though that is not easy." This is really the heart of the Taoist concept of Wu-Wei, which is loosely translated as doing and not doing. Wu-Wei is refraining from using force, trying to force things with deliberate action. Taoism is not against force. Natural systems have force, right? Waterfalls, rock falls. Taoism suggests that we refrain from deliberate use of force against the natural order, that we refrain from intentional use of force. So if we refrain from intentional use of action or force, what do we do? Well, Wu-Wei does not mean doing nothing, or conversely, not doing anything. Let's see what Wu-Wei is about. The idea is to leave most things alone, only interfering at strategic points when the minimum effort will achieve the maximum results. There's probably a physics formula for that. A good leader understands this principle. You let your team take responsibility, have a clear goal, but encourage them to do it themselves, tweaking as necessary to keep things moving in the right direction. Or good teachers understand that you can't stand in front of your classroom screaming at the students to do what you want them to do or sending them to detention when they don't. You use a light hand. You pay attention to their energy and channel it. And of course, all this is easier said than done. I feel a real fondness for that fellow in the reading, Yen Hui, the one who wants to go off and save that land with the deviant prince. He's been learning the virtues, studying the text. He's ready to head off and help the people and convince this tyrannical leader to change his ways. He's well-intentioned and earnest. And then, of course, he gets bracingly clarifying questions about his motives. His teacher says, if you don't understand the people's spirits, or if you try to lecture this tyrant on his failings, you're just using the failings of others to demonstrate your own superiority. Ouch. According to the master, you must be truly clear on your own motives when you try to change a situation. This requires knowing yourself and bringing honesty, humility, and self-reflection. This is how we cultivate virtue in ourselves. And once you're clear on your own motives, you must be very tuned into the situation in order to know how and when to intervene or not intervene. Sometimes not doing is as important as doing. These works by Chuang Tsu are the first known statement of the philosophy of nonviolence as a form of resistance, as a form of action. Wu-Wei is about being in tune with the natural processes and acting or not acting when the time is right. This requires knowing yourself, understanding your motives, staying centered in your values, and being present to what is unfolding. Anyone who has tried to talk to a family member on the other side of the political spectrum knows those steps fully well. You must be centered in your values, know yourself, understand your motives, and be present to what is unfolding. And always remember, it takes a long time to do things properly. Now, this idea of not taking action or waiting for the right time may be considered un-American. We're a nation of doers, of people who take action. We build dams, we control water flow. We don't just let things follow their own course. We change them the way we think they ought to be. We push ourselves against hardship and barriers to achieve new frontiers. When some people think of Taoism, they think of the quintessential monk sitting on the barren mountaintop, right? The fool on the hill from the Lennon and McCartney song. It's a myth of Taoism, the fool on the hill. It's an extreme, but it raises an important issue. Between the mythical monk and the person of constant action, there's a mixed ground that most of us occupy. There are times to go with the flow and times to change things. Has the bulk of the Republican Party met its own and nation's needs by going along with the former president? I'm having a go-the-flow moment with this not finding my text, so I appreciate your patience with me so much. In ancient China, Confucian sages struggled with the application of Taoist concepts, and there were two schools of thought, those that withdrew as hermits and those who sought to apply Taoist principles in governance and activities of life. The latter sought to incorporate the techniques of the hermits into a life of action through meditation, self-knowledge, and self-control, seeing things as they are, and trying to live with ethical discipline. The goal was to keep oneself centered and yet flexible in the unpredictableness of the world. They sought to be aware of limitations and also wary of hubris. These are Fred's words, and I love them. I think about my own life, of taking unwise action, of overstepping boundaries that right or wrong could not be overcome, of moving with arrogance and hubris rather than love when action had possibilities. That's a beautiful sentence. Moving with arrogance and hubris rather than love when action had possibilities. I've come to believe that it is essential to cycle through periods of inaction and reflection and periods of action. This cycle might be minutes, it might be hours, it might be months or years. It takes a long time to do things properly.
Generosity is a spiritual practice, and our congregation practices generosity by sharing our Sunday offering with an organization that serves our mission to be a force for healing in the world. This month, our community partner is Opening Doors. Their mission is to empower refugees, immigrants, human trafficking survivors, and underserved Sacramento area residents to achieve self-sufficiency by providing safe places, skills development, business loans, and connections to community resources. You can see on the slide the various ways that you can contribute to our offering. Thank you for your generosity to the church and to our community partner, Opening Doors. The morning's offering will now be given and received. Love those dissonances. As we acknowledge our generosity, will you join me in our unison response? May the spirit of gratitude bless and multiply all that we have, all that we give, and all that we share. The last reading today are some quotes from Martin Luther King, Jr. In spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself. We will try to persuade with our words, but if our words fail, we will try to persuade with our acts. Here is the true meaning and value of compassion and nonviolence, when it helps us to see the enemy's point of view, to hear his questions, and to know his assessment of ourselves. For from his view, we may indeed see the basic weaknesses of our own condition. And if we are mature, we may learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers who are called the opposition. In the nonviolent army, there is room for everyone who wants to join up. There is no color distinction. There is no examination, no pledge, except that as a soldier in the army of violence is expected to inspect his carbon and keep it clean, nonviolent soldiers are called upon to examine their greatest weapons, their heart, their conscience, their courage, and sense of justice.
One of the most famous acts of Wu-Wei in the past 200 years was when Rosa Parks refused to get up from her seat on the bus and move to the back so that a white person could have her seat. She was not the first one to be arrested for this act, nor was she naive about what she was doing. She knew that activists were considered staging an arrest for the purpose of confronting the racial segregation system on the bus line. But that was not the plan for that day. On that day, she was sick and tired, and didn't want to get up. And so she stayed seated. Her action set off a chain reaction. She was extremely well connected in Montgomery, active and engaged in her community, respected for her kindness and decency. So when people heard that Rosa Parks had been arrested, they all wanted to know what they could do. Their energy and commitment naturally led to the bus boycott, a violent action that put pressure on the city to change the laws. 26-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. was called in to help lead the effort. He was the new kid in town and had only been in Montgomery for a year. He had studied the theories of nonviolent action through the teachings of Jesus and Gandhi and others, and had been preaching these ideas to his congregation. But this was the first opportunity he had to put these ideas into practice. After a few months of the bus boycott, his house was firebombed by white supremacists, and crowds of neighbors came out to support him. A confrontation started with the police. King found himself at the center of a possible violent riot in the Black community. It's one thing to preach nonviolence. It's quite another thing to convince a mob to practice it on the spot. But convince them he did, with the words of Jesus, "Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you." This moment and all of that, Rosa Parks' non-action, community solidarity, the boycott, the bombing, all of it launched years of nonviolent action in support of civil rights and ultimately changed the segregation laws in our country. The Wu-Wei of the 20th century. Can you imagine the self-control it would have taken for those African Americans to engage in nonviolent action? How much faith, commitment, and courage that they would have to have? They had the anger, frustration, fear, humiliation, and pain of hundreds of years of slavery and violent oppression of their people. And yet, they were able to stand there while being sprayed with water cannons, beaten, and attacked by dogs. And their action was powerful because it forced our country to look at the violence and the hate spewed by white supremacists. Doing by not doing, changing the world by not reacting when people tried to stop them from exercising their basic rights, like walking down the street or sitting where you chose to on the bus. Martin Luther King also chose carefully when and how to stage these actions, staying tuned to the current in the community. In his words, we hear the echoes of the Tao, the echoes of Chuang Tsu. King tells us to learn from our understanding of the enemy, and not just about them, but about ourselves and how the enemy perceives us, what the enemy perceives in us. He tells us that our greatest weapon in the act of doing, not doing, is our own heart, our conscience, our courage, our own sense of justice. Wu-Wei can seem passive against the torrent of hate in our world, but it is a powerful tool to understand ourselves and be in touch with the natural flow of life. It can save us from feeling powerless. It can help us clarify our own task at this time in history. Wu-Wei is challenging and it is simple. One way to practice it is through kindness, attentive, responsive kindness. Kindness to yourself and to others. Kindness to everyone. Listen. Be aware of your motives. Keep an open mind. In our current climate, kindness is a radical, nonviolent act of resistance that can help us along the path of transformation, that can help our world along the path of transformation. And we can practice Wu-Wei by being attentive, not to the New York Times or to NPR, but to each other, to our earth, to the resonance of nature and the patterns of life. As the Master says, it takes a long time to do things properly. We must remember that some of the challenges faced in our world today will take a long time to change, much longer than our own lifetime. We are but a small blip in the long arc of time. But with our attention and intention, we can make a difference in the time that we have. We can learn to act, and we can learn when not to act. That's the skill that we need to master. The skill of knowing ourselves and knowing what is present in our world so that we know when to act to have the greatest impact. This is the skill that we need to master and put into practice to help bring more love to our hurting world. So may it be. Blessings on your doing and on your not doing.
Please stand and join me in our final hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, 1008.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, sweet and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. As Mary extinguishes the chalice, I share these words of benediction with you. And let's reach out, and however you're comfortable, reach out to our Zoom folks. Hey, Zoomers, we know you're there. We love you. We're glad you're with us. Doing, not doing. It's complicated and it's simple. It's being present and attentive. It's trusting, it's having faith, it's being connected, it's offering your love, and it's knowing that you will know when the time is right. you will know. Let us all metaphorically hold hands and go forth into this world and offer our love, our grounded sense of virtue and importance to each other, because we truly can make a difference. We have to believe it. We have to believe it. Blessings on your journey. Amen.